The night she hid inside my trailer, whispering those words that still claw at the back of my mind, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. "He's watching us," she said, barely a sound, yet heavy enough to freeze everything inside me. "Tell me, what would you do if you opened your trailer at 3 in the morning, smelling diesel and cold iron, and found a stranger curled in the dark corner, trembling like a hunted animal?" Because I swear, the moment I saw her knees pulled to her chest and her eyes wide with terror, I felt the road tilt beneath my boots. The air at that hour carries a different kind of silence, the kind that listens. My rig sat under flickering truck stop neon, fog rising from the asphalt as if the night itself was breathing. I was halfway through securing my load when I heard the faintest thud from inside the trailer. Not metal shifting, not cargo settling, something softer, human. I remember wiping the sweat and cold mist from my forehead before sliding the latch open, expecting maybe a stray animal, but instead, meeting 2 terrified eyes staring right back at me. Her voice cracked around the words, whisper thin, "Please, don't let him find me." I froze, not because she scared me, but because she looked like she'd already survived hell. Hair tangled, clothes torn at the edges, dirt smudged along her arms. She wasn't hurt, not visibly, but the fear radiating off her was real, thick, heavy, the kind you can't fake, the kind that shakes you down to the bone. I crouched slowly, careful not to spook her, and asked her name. She hesitated, like speaking it might summon the man she feared. Finally, barely audible, "Lena, just Lena," as if giving more might cost her something. I asked if someone was chasing her. She swallowed hard, eyes darting to the dark gap through the trailer doors like she expected a shadow to step inside. "He's here," she whispered, voice trembling. "He followed me. He always follows me." Her breath hitched, shaking her whole body. I didn't know her story yet, but I knew the look of someone running from a predator, seen it too many times, felt it in the way she flinched at distant footsteps in the lot, the way her hands kept tightening around the fabric of her jacket, the way her eyes begged for safety, not explanations. The neon light buzzed above us, humming like a warning. I stepped inside, closing the trailer doors just enough to block her from view without trapping either of us. The cold metal of the latch pressed against my palm, a grounding weight in a moment that didn't feel real. I told her my name, Grant Walker, voice steady, calm, the same tone I'd used for years to settle panicked drivers on icy roads. She stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was the one thing standing between her and something much worse. Before I could ask more, Lena grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, pulling me closer. "He's watching us," she breathed, as if the words themselves were dangerous. Her eyes were glassy, frantic, reflecting the faint headlights passing along the highway. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I've hauled through blizzards, tornadoes, and nights where the only light on the horizon was lightning, but nothing compares to the fear of someone who believes they're being hunted, because fear like that, it doesn't come from imagination. It comes from experience. And before the 45-second mark even hit, I knew something. This wasn't just a woman hiding in my trailer. This was a cry for help on a night when the world chose to look the other way. And if you're listening to this now, really listening, hit that like button. Not for me, but because stories like Lena's deserve to be heard. They remind us that out here on the road, danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. I told Lena to stay low and keep quiet while I stepped toward the trailer doors, every instinct in me tightening like a coiled wire. The night outside felt different now, colder, heavier, as if whatever she feared had seeped into the air itself. I cracked the door just an inch, just enough to see the truck stop lot bathed in sickly neon, empty fuel pumps, a lone vending machine humming, the highway beyond, dark and endless, nothing out of place, nothing suspicious, but silence. Silence can hide more than shadows ever will. The smell of diesel drifted through the opening, mixing with the metallic tang of cold air. I scanned the row of parked rigs, massive beasts sleeping under the flickering lights. Most drivers were inside, resting, unaware that something was unfolding just a few feet away from them. The stillness was almost mocking. That's when I noticed it. One rig with its headlights off, engine idling so quietly it barely vibrated the ground. A dark silhouette behind the wheel, not moving, not adjusting, just sitting there, watching. My breath slowed. My pulse didn't. I shut the trailer door softly, locking us back inside that dim metal box. Lena sat against a pallet, arms wrapped around herself like she was holding her ribs together. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for any sign of safety. I crouched in front of her again. "Is he here?" I asked, my voice low. She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, just whispered, "If you saw a car running, then yes." The certainty in her voice chilled me deeper than the night ever could. I asked who he was, what he wanted, why she was running. She hesitated, breathing shallow. like speaking the truth might pull him right to her feet. "His name is Colton," she finally said, the name trembling out of her like a confession. Colton Red. That name carried weight, the kind that doesn't come from fear alone, the kind that drips with history, bad history. She looked down at her hands, fingers trembling. "He blames me for something I didn't do, and he won't stop until he finds me." A soft, metallic clank echoed from outside, not loud, but enough to make Lena jerk upright, eyes wide. I held a finger to my lips, signaling her to stay quiet. The footsteps that followed were slow, deliberate, crunching on gravel. Someone was moving outside the trailer, someone who didn't care if they were heard, someone who wanted whoever was inside to know they were there. Lena's breathing hitched, panic rising through her in sharp, choked gasps. I slid closer to the door, muscles tense, listening as the footsteps circled the rear of the trailer. The sound stopped, right behind us. Then two knuckles rapped against the metal wall, not harsh, not rushed, just a slow, calculated tap, tap, tap. Lena covered her mouth, tears spilling silently, her whole body trembling. I pressed my palm against the metal wall, feeling the faint vibration of the knock echo through my bones. Whoever was out there wasn't guessing. They knew. Someone was inside, someone they wanted. And the question that burned through me wasn't who he was, it was how he'd tracked her here. I leaned close to Lena, voice barely more than breath. "Whatever happens, you stay behind me, understand?" She nodded, lips trembling. And as the footsteps moved again, circling toward the trailer doors, one thought lodged itself deep into my chest. This wasn't chance. This was a hunt. The footsteps outside grew heavier, pressing into the gravel with a slow confidence that made every instinct in me sharpen. Whoever he wasn't in a hurry. Hunters rarely are. They move with the certainty of someone who already believes the outcome is fixed. I pressed my ear against the thin metal wall, listening, the faint scrape of a boot, the shifting of weight, a pause like he was leaning close, trying to hear inside. The trailer suddenly felt smaller, the air tighter, every breath colder. Lena clutched her knees, rocking slightly, whispering to herself, "He found me. He always finds me." I forced myself to breathe steady. Panic gets people hurt faster than bullets ever could. I scanned the inside of the trailer, stacks of crates, straps, tarps, and shadows. Nothing useful. Nothing that would help if the man outside forced the doors open. My rig was parked at the far end of the lot, meaning if I made a move for the cab, he'd see me. I needed a distraction, something to shift control back into my hands, even if just for a moment. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing against my truck keys. A plan flickered in the back of my mind. Dangerous, maybe stupid, but better than sitting here waiting. And then, silence. Complete, suffocating silence. The footsteps stopped. No crunching gravel, no tapping, nothing. I looked toward Lena, whispering, "Do you hear anything?" She shook her head, tears catching the dim trailer light. "This is what he does," she said, voice barely a breath. "He waits. He lets you think he's gone." My jaw clenched. Every nerve in me screamed to act, but the uncertainty kept me frozen. The kind of silence that hides a decision being made on the other side of the wall. Suddenly a burst of bright white light washed over the trailer from the side. Headlights. Someone was pulling into the lot. The glow painted long shadows across the aluminum walls. And for the first time that night, I hoped it was another trucker, someone who might scare the man off. But hope vanished fast when I realized the headlights weren't moving. They'd stopped halfway across the lot, aimed directly at my trailer like a spotlight. Lena buried her face in her hands, shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, that's his car. Grant, that's his car." Colton Red. The name echoed in my head like a warning. I imagined him sitting behind those headlights, wheels turned slightly, engine idling with calculated patience. A man who enjoyed the chase more than the capture. A man who wanted her frightened, cornered, unsure. I edged toward the side door of the trailer, peeking through a sliver of the frame to confirm, and my stomach dropped. A dark sedan sat there, windows tinted, driver's silhouette faintly lit by the glow of the dashboard. He wasn't approaching. He was waiting. Lena crawled closer to me, voice cracking. "Please, don't let him take me. You don't understand what he—" She cut herself off, choking on her own breath. Whatever she'd escaped, whatever she'd seen, was something deep enough to twist her voice into that trembling sound. I placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm not letting anyone touch you," I said, calm, steady, certain, even if my mind raced with every worst-case scenario imaginable. Because the truth was, I didn't know what this man was capable of, but fear like hers doesn't grow from nothing. The sedan's engine revved softly, a low growl vibrating across the lot. A warning, a message, maybe even a countdown. The moment stretched thin between us, me inside the trailer with a terrified woman clinging to the edge of hope, and him outside in the dark, watching, waiting for the slightest mistake, and in that razor-thin space between stillness and disaster I made a choice. I wasn't going to wait for him to make the next move. I slid the trailer door open just a crack, no more than an inch, cold air slicing through the narrow gap and stinging my face. The night outside felt alive, tense, like the storm clouds overhead were holding their breath. The sedan's headlights glared through the darkness, locking onto my trailer like a predator's eyes glowing in the brush. I couldn't see Colton's face through the tinted glass, but I felt him staring back. Men like him carry a certain presence. Cold, calculated, patient in the worst possible way. A presence you don't forget once you've met it. Behind me, Lena crawled closer, fingers digging into the floorboards. "Don't go out there," she whispered, voice trembling like a frayed wire. "He'll hurt you. He'll hurt anyone who gets between us." I turned just enough to meet her eyes, the fear in them deep enough to swallow the space between us. But I'd lived too many years on this road to back down from a man hiding behind tinted glass. Fear doesn't get to dictate my choices. It's the people who need protection who do. "I'm not going far," I said, voice low. "Just checking something. Stay low, stay quiet." As I stepped out onto the pavement, the crunch of gravel under my boots echoed louder than it should have. The night air bit at my skin, carrying the faint, sharp scent of gasoline and cold metal. I walked slowly, deliberately, keeping my hands where he could see them if he was watching through the windshield. The sedan didn't move. The engine purred softly, headlights steady, too steady. My heartbeat hammered in my ears as I moved along the side of the trailer, each step tightening the tension between us like a drawn bowstring. Halfway around the rig I stopped. There, near the back tires, something glinted faintly under the glow of the distant neon. A fresh boot print, crisp, sharp-edged, not softened by time or weather. Someone had been standing there minutes ago, maybe seconds, watching the trailer, close enough to hear Lena breathe. The print faced the trailer, not the parking lot. My stomach clenched. He wasn't just observing from his car. He had been right here, right behind the thin metal wall she'd pressed her trembling back against, close enough to touch. A low hum drifted through the lot, another engine, softer, approaching from the highway. My pulse quickened. Backup, another trucker, a deputy doing a patrol, or someone else working with Colton. I moved toward the front of the trailer, careful not to cast too much of a silhouette against the headlights. The new vehicle pulled into the lot slowly, tires crunching over gravel. I crouched halfway behind my rig, muscles tense, ready to react. The vehicle rolled to a stop near the vending machines, and for a moment I saw the reflection of a uniform in the windshield. Relief washed through me so fast it almost took my knees out from under me. A sheriff's deputy, Mason Cole. I'd met him twice before, once during a snowstorm when he helped redirect traffic for a jackknifed truck, and once when he stopped by a diner at dawn to grab coffee. Solid guy, level-headed, the kind who doesn't carry fear in his shadow. He stepped out of his vehicle, breath rising in pale clouds, scanning the lot with a cautious eye. When his gaze met mine, he nodded. "Evening, Grant," he said, voice steady, unaware of the storm brewing right under the neon glow. But the moment he turned toward the sedan, something shifted. His expression tightened. His hand drifted toward his holster, not grabbing it, but settling near it. "That car been here long?" he asked quietly. "Engines running. Windows too dark for this time of night." I followed his gaze. The sedan still hadn't moved, still idling, still staring at the trailer like it was the only thing that mattered in the world. And as Mason took one slow step toward it, I felt something cold slide down my spine. Colton wasn't watching the lot anymore. He was watching the deputy. Deputy Mason's boots scraped lightly against the gravel as he approached the sedan, each step slow and deliberate. The kind of walk officers use when they don't want to spook whoever's inside but also don't want to end up on the wrong end of a bad decision. The tension in the air tightened like a rope pulled between two trucks. I stayed half hidden behind my rig, close enough to help if things went sideways, far enough not to interfere. The cold bit at my face, but I barely felt it. All I felt was the weight of what Lena had said echoing in the back of my mind. He's watching us, and now he was watching someone else too. Mason stopped a few feet from the sedan, hand hovering near his holster. "Evening," he said calmly, voice carrying across the lot. "You all right in there?" No response, no movement. The windows remained black mirrors, reflecting only the neon flicker above the gas pumps. Mason took a step closer, shining his flashlight onto the windshield. Still nothing. My hands curled into fists. I didn't like any of it. The stillness, the silence, the way that car sat there like a trap with its jaws already open. The deputy tapped the window lightly with two knuckles. "If you can hear me, roll it down." Again, nothing. Not even the faint shift of weight inside. Mason exhaled sharply, and I saw his jaw tighten. He reached for the door handle. The moment his fingers touched it, something inside me screamed, "Don't." Some instinct older than logic, older than training, older than anything except survival. "Mason," I called, voice low. He paused, turning his head slightly. "Careful," I said. "Something's not right." He gave a small nod, acknowledging the warning, then turned his attention back to the sedan. He cracked the door open a few inches, and the engine shut off instantly. Mason jerked his hand back on reflex, the sudden silence slamming into the lot like a physical force. My breath caught in my chest. The headlights dimmed, fading into blackness, leaving us with only neon reflections, stretching across the pavement like long, thin claws. The deputy stepped back, flashlight raised. "Driver, show your hands," he ordered, voice steady but sharper now. No movement. The car stayed dead silent. Mason opened the door wider, and the inside of the car came into view. Empty. Driver's seat pushed back, dashboard lights glowing faintly. The engine had been idling, but no one had been inside. Not for minutes, maybe longer. Mason swept his flashlight through the cabin, checking every corner. "He's on foot," the deputy said, voice dropping into something harder. "Someone parked it, left it running, and slipped out the moment you weren't looking." A cold realization cracked through me. While I'd been checking the perimeter, while Lena hid inside the trailer, while I thought I was the one assessing him, Colton had been the one circling the board, moving pieces, watching, waiting, planning his next step, and he'd done it without making a sound. Mason turned back toward me. "Grant, where's your cargo door?" he asked. "And is there anyone inside your rig I should know about?" His tone wasn't accusatory, just careful, prepared. I hesitated just for a second, then I nodded toward the back of the trailer. "Yes," I said. "There's someone who needs help." The deputy's eyes narrowed with concern, and before either of us could move another inch, a metallic bang erupted from the far side of the lot. Heavy, sharp, deliberate, the sound of someone knocking something over, or someone trying to draw us away. Mason's flashlight snapped toward the noise. Mine snapped toward the trailer, because if that bang was a distraction, then Lena was no longer the only one being hunted. My heart punched against my ribs as that metallic crash echoed across the empty lot, sharp enough to send a shiver down the spine of the night itself. Mason instinctively angled his body toward the sound, one hand hovering over his holster, stance low and ready. But I wasn't looking at the darkness where the noise came from. I was looking at the trailer, at the thin metal wall where Lena hid, trembling, trusting me to keep whatever nightmare followed her from stepping inside. The wind swept across the pavement, carrying with it a cold so sharp it felt like a warning. Mason glanced back at me. "Stay behind the trailer," he ordered quietly. Whatever made that noise might be. He didn't finish, didn't need to. We both knew what it might be, what it almost certainly was. Colton Red wasn't the type to knock things over by accident. If he made a sound, it was because he wanted us to hear it, wanted to control where we looked, where we stepped, where we didn't. "He's pulling us apart," I muttered, realizing it even as the thought formed. Mason's jaw clenched. "Yeah," he said, classic misdirection. The deputy moved toward the far corner of the lot, flashlight cutting through darkness like a blade. I stayed behind the trailer but shifted closer to the doors, just close enough that I could reach them in seconds. The air felt too quiet, too still. Even the hum of the neon seemed to fade. I listened for movement, breath, shadow, anything. Nothing came, and that silence was worse than noise. Silence meant he could be anywhere, waiting, watching, choosing. I tapped twice on the trailer door. Our signal. Lena tapped twice back. Soft, trembling, but alive. Relief pulsed through me, but it didn't last, because as I pressed my palm against the cold aluminum, I noticed something on the ground beneath the rig. A second boot print, fresh, deep, pointing toward the trailer this time. My stomach dropped. He'd moved closer while we were distracted by the sedan. He'd been here again, standing right underneath the rig, close enough to listen to every breath inside. A sudden rustle of gravel snapped my attention to the right. Not loud, not heavy, just the faint sound of someone shifting their weight. I turned sharply, scanning between the rigs, between shadows and fuel pumps. Nothing. Then a faint outline moved between two parked trucks. Quick, subtle, almost ghost-like. I couldn't make out a face, just the shape of a coat, the flicker of movement, the suggestion of a body sliding behind a trailer wall. My pulse spiked. I sucked in a breath, ready to shout for Mason, but then a voice whispered behind me. "Grant." It wasn't Lena. I spun around, flashlight raised instinctively like a weapon, and found myself staring at a figure standing at the far end of my trailer, not rushing me, not hiding, standing, watching. The shadows kept his features blurred, but the posture, the stillness, the way he held his arms slightly away from his sides, it was deliberate, controlled, predatory. My throat tightened as the cold scraped down my spine, because for the first time all night, I wasn't guessing anymore. Colton Red wasn't hunting in silence. He was ready to speak. He stepped forward just enough for the neon light to brush the edge of his face, revealing a smile so calm it didn't belong in a night like this. The kind of smile that told you he'd already imagined every possible outcome, every move I might make, and he wasn't afraid of a single one. "You've caused me a lot of trouble tonight," he said, voice low, steady, almost conversational. "Didn't expect you to be the curious type." His boots crunched softly against the gravel as he approached, unhurried, confident. The kind of confidence that made my muscles coil tight with instinct. I kept my stance squared, kept the flashlight raised just enough to see him clearly, but not enough to blind him. A man like this doesn't spook. He measures, he reads, he waits for weakness. "You need to leave," I said, voice firm but even. "Whatever you're after, it's not happening here." He tilted his head, amused, like we were discussing something as harmless as spilled coffee. "Oh, Grant," he murmured, "you don't even know what you've stepped into, but you will." The way he said my name, like he'd practiced it, sent a cold spike down my spine. I glanced toward the far side of the lot where Mason had disappeared between two rigs. If he saw anything, if he heard anything, he'd be heading back this way. But Colton wasn't watching the deputy anymore. His eyes were locked on me with a quiet intensity that felt like a snare tightening. "She told you I was a monster, didn't she?" he said, taking another slow step closer. "People like her always do. They know how to twist things, how to make themselves look like victims." His voice darkened, not in anger, something worse. Conviction. The lie was so smooth it scared me more than the truth ever could. "She's terrified of you," I said, "and I've seen enough on this road to know real fear when I see it." He chuckled softly, almost sympathetically. "Fear," he said, tapping two fingers against his chest, "is something she knows how to create. She's survived this long by manipulating the right men." He paused. "Men like you, men who think they can save the world." His gaze cut sharper. "But she's not who you think she is." Behind me, inside the trailer, I heard the faintest sound, a shaky inhale, the kind a person makes when they're trying to disappear into themselves. Lena was listening, hearing every word he said, and I saw something flicker in his expression, almost imperceptible, a flicker toward the trailer door, toward her. His voice softened, as if he were comforting a child. "She should have stayed quiet," he whispered. "She never does." That was the moment I realized something horrible. This wasn't the first time he'd hunted her. This wasn't desperation. This was routine. He took another step, boots sinking into gravel with a slow crunch. "Now," he said, lifting his eyes back to mine, "you're going to open that door, you'll step aside, and she'll come with me." His tone didn't rise, didn't force. He spoke like someone stating a fact, as if the decision had already been made, as if I were just an obstacle delaying the inevitable. A chill dripped through me, cold and steady. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, muscles tensing, ready for whatever came next. But before I could speak, before I could even blink, Mason's voice cut through the night like a sharp blade. "Not another step." Colton didn't turn around. He smiled. Mason emerged from between two parked rigs, flashlight raised in one hand, the other resting firmly on his holster. Snow dusted his shoulders, his breath rising in steady clouds, but his voice didn't shake. "Hands where I can see them," he ordered, stepping into full view. Colton didn't lift his hands, didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge the deputy behind him at all. He kept his eyes locked on mine, the faint glow of neon reflecting in that unsettling calm. "You brought a friend," he murmured, as if amused by the idea. "That complicates things. For you." Mason moved closer, boots solid against the gravel, stance perfectly squared. "Turn around, slowly." For a heartbeat, I thought Colton might obey. His shoulders rose slightly with a deep breath, like he was preparing to do exactly that. But then he exhaled in a soft, disappointed sigh and tilted his head, letting his eyes flick to the trailer door. Just for a second, but enough to send a jolt through me, enough to make me realize Lena wasn't just afraid of what he'd do if he found her. She was afraid of what he'd do to anyone standing between them. "Deputy," Colton finally said, voice smooth and low, "you're going to regret stepping into this." Mason didn't waver. "Last warning," he said, authority tightening his tone. "Hands up." Colton's fingers twitched slightly at his sides, an almost lazy movement, a movement that didn't look threatening but didn't look innocent either, the kind of movement that makes a man like Mason tense just enough to shift his weight forward. I could feel the moment stretching thinner, tighter, ready to snap. Then Colton's smile faded, completely. He lowered his chin just a fraction, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried farther than it should have in the cold air. "She ruined everything," he said. "And you have no idea what she's capable of." The way he said it made the hair on my arms rise, not because I believed him, but because I could hear the poison behind it, the justification, the obsession. Mason took another cautious step, flashlight beam locking onto Colton's chest. Turn around, Mason repeated, slower this time, firmer. Now, for the first time all night, Colton's composure cracked, not in fear, but in calculation. His shoulders shifted, weight shifting subtly to his right foot. A setup, not a surrender. My breath hitched as the pieces clicked. "Mason!" I shouted, stepping forward instinctively, but the deputy was already reacting, already reading the same tell in Colton's stance. His hand snapped to his holster. Colton moved first, not toward Mason, not toward me, toward the trailer. His boots shredded gravel as he pivoted, sprinting directly at the doors, reaching for the latch with a desperate, furious precision that sent adrenaline ripping through my chest. He wasn't trying to escape. He wasn't trying to fight. He was trying to get to Lena, right now, right in front of us. Her scream echoed faintly from inside, small, broken, terrified, the kind of scream that forces decisions faster than thought. I ran, Mason shouted. Colton reached for the latch, and the night exploded into motion. I slammed into Colton before he could rip the latch open, the impact jolting through both of us like a bolt of electricity. His shoulder crashed into the trailer wall, metal ringing out across the lot. He snarled, a raw, guttural sound stripped of the calm he'd worn like armor all night. I grabbed his coat, trying to pin him, but he twisted with startling strength, throwing his weight sideways and forcing me to stumble. The trailer door rattled behind us as Lena sobbed from the other side, her voice shaking with terror. "Grant!" she cried, her panic slicing through the cold air like a blade. Colton's elbow drove toward my ribs, but I blocked it with my forearm, the shock numbing my skin. He fought like a man who didn't care about pain, only victory, only possession. Mason sprinted toward us, boots hammering the gravel, shouting commands that neither of us could hear over the chaos. Colton shoved hard, knocking me backward, and for a split second his hand grazed the latch again. I lunged, grabbing his arm, dragging him down with me. We hit the ground hard, the cold biting into my palms as we rolled through the gravel. He twisted above me, fingers clawing for leverage, eyes wild with intent. "You don't know what she did," he hissed, breath hot against the freezing night. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It was cracked, frayed, slipping, a man unraveling. I pushed against him, forcing him back, but he surged with sudden brutal strength, pinning my shoulders. His knee pressed into my chest, stealing my breath. His hands reached for my throat, not squeezing, just gripping, like he was deciding whether to break me or use me as leverage to reach her. Then Mason's voice cut through the frenzy. "Get off him!" The deputy barreled into Colton from behind, ripping him off me with a force fueled by both training and instinct. Colton stumbled but didn't fall. He spun toward the deputy with a snarl, shoving him back. For a heartbeat, the two men faced each other, the law and the lawless. Breath fogging, tension coiled tight. Mason drew himself upright, stance firm. "You're done," he said. "This ends now." But Colton wasn't listening. His eyes flicked past the deputy, past me, back to the trailer, to her. His obsession burned so hot it almost glowed in his pupils. "She lied," he whispered, voice cracking. "She ruined my life. She doesn't get to walk away from this." His hand inched toward his coat, not for a weapon, for something else. Something he wanted to show Mason, maybe. Something he thought would justify everything he'd done. I didn't wait to find out. I lunged again, slamming my shoulder into his side, knocking him off balance. We crashed into the trailer steps, metal groaning under the weight. Colton's grip tightened around whatever he'd grabbed in his coat, a small object, dark, rectangular, something he clutched like proof. But the moment he hit the ground, the object slipped from his hand, skidding across the gravel and landing near Mason's boot. The deputy's flashlight swung down, illuminating it. A phone, shattered, bloody. Mason's expression shifted from focus to something darker, a realization, a piece of a puzzle falling into place. He looked at Colton, then at me. "Step back," he commanded sharply. I did, slowly, breathing hard, chest aching. Colton pushed himself up on one elbow, trembling with fury and desperation. He wasn't done, not yet. He lifted his eyes to us, voice breaking into something raw and vengeful. "You don't understand," he rasped. "She took everything from me." And inside the trailer, Lena whispered a trembling answer neither of us expected. "No, you took everything from yourself." Her voice cracked through the trailer walls like a fault line splitting open. Even muffled by metal, the tremor in her words carried years' worth of fear and truth. Colton froze, not because he was hurt, but because he didn't expect her to speak. Not now, not after everything. The fury in his expression flickered, replaced by something colder, more dangerous. "Lena," he breathed, voice trembling in a way I hadn't heard all night. "You don't get to say my name." But she did, and she said it again, stronger this time, her voice shaking less with terror and more with something close to defiance. "You destroyed your own life. I just survived it." Mason stepped between us, hand firmly on his holster now, eyes never leaving Colton. "That's enough," he said, voice steady as steel. "It's over." But men like Colton don't hear the word over. They only hear the word lost. And the moment he realized that for the first time he wasn't getting Lena back under any circumstances, something inside him snapped. Not loudly, not violently, quietly, like a thread breaking. He shifted his weight, eyes scanning the lot, not toward escape, not toward cover, but toward Lena again, like the world had narrowed into one single target. I moved in front of the trailer doors instinctively, body blocking the latch, breath fogging in the air. "It's done, Colton," I said, voice low but unshaking. "Whatever story you've been telling yourself, it ends here." For a long moment, he didn't move. Snow drifted between us. Neon lights flickered overhead, the whole world holding its breath. And then, he lowered his head, shoulders falling just an inch, a surrender that wasn't made of regret, but exhaustion, defeat, hollow, heavy, bitter. Mason seized the moment, stepping in, securing his wrists with practiced precision. Colton didn't fight. Not now, not anymore. The fight in him had burned out the moment Lena finally said the truth out loud. The deputy led him toward the cruiser, the flashing lights reflecting off the icy pavement. As the door shut behind him, the lot felt different, lighter, like a storm had finally passed. I turned back to the trailer and opened the door slowly. Lena sat trembling in the shadows, arms wrapped around her legs, tears streaking down her cheeks. Not the frantic kind from earlier, but a softer, quieter release. "He's gone?" she whispered. I nodded. "He won't touch you again." She exhaled a long, breaking breath, the kind that carries every piece of a nightmare leaving the body. She stepped out of the trailer slowly, as if testing whether the world outside was safe again. Mason approached with a blanket, draping it gently over her shoulders. She whispered a thank you, voice small, fragile but alive in a way it hadn't been before. Noah's reflexive trust in me earlier tonight had been instinct. Lena's was a choice, and choices made after surviving someone like Colton mean something deeper than words ever could. She looked at me, eyes full of exhaustion and a gratitude she didn't know how to express. "You didn't have to help," she said. "Most people wouldn't." I shook my head slowly. "No one deserves to run alone in the dark," I told her. "Not on my watch, not on any night." And as the adrenaline faded and the lot quieted back to its usual hum of engines and humming neon, I felt that truth settle into me deeper than anything else. This road, this life behind the wheel, it has a way of placing the right people in your path at the exact moment they need someone to stand up for them. Maybe that's chance, maybe it's fate, or maybe it's just what happens when you refuse to look away. So if you're still here with me, if you rode through this night, felt the cold, the fear, the breath of danger on your neck, then let this story mean something. Hit that like button so more people understand what real danger looks like when it hides in silence. Subscribe, because every mile on this road carries another voice, another moment, another life crossing mine. And stay close, because somewhere out there under another neon sign on another quiet stretch of highway, someone else is going to need help, and I'll be there, always.